Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson. Shealey, good morning. It is a bright, sunny morning here in Atlanta, y'all. Thank you for joining me on this broadcast. Oh, what a week it has been, y'all. If you were with me last week, last week I went there. I went there. We got pretty controversial last week and talked about the Biden mandates, the vaccines, and my guest and I were shut down on YouTube mid broadcast. We were literally shut all the way down. So we're just going to see how it goes today, y'all. I don't know if I'm being heavily censored right now. I'm probably being watched. I'm sure. It's all good because I do have a plan B for making sure that we are seen and we are heard. We will not let these times that we're in stop us from speaking our truths. So this morning, let's get this broadcast started. We have been following the story out of California, the Burgess brothers, the family wealth that was stolen. The what California did. Only Jonathan Burgess can tell this story. So let's bring him into the broadcast. Let's add him into the stream. I think he's there. Good morning, Jonathan.
I'm here. Good morning. A little dark, but I'm here.
Yes. Good morning. How are you?
It's a beautiful Saturday morning. I'm doing great. It's my birthday today, actually.
Happy birthday to you.
That's right.
In my Georgia voice. Happy birthday. It's two of you, you and your twin. You have a birthday at the same time, right? Not just your birthday.
No, there are two of us. Matthew, he's a lot like you. Well, not like you, but he's running for California State Senate. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing honor to be here and share this story with you about our family and this rich history in California. So I'm excited.
Thank you for joining me. You and I have become fast friends. We have been traveling and navigating the clubhouse streets, talking about reparations and why it's important. We're having this conversation in all these spaces, and your family. This story has to be told, and I know you tell it over and over again, but you have to keep telling it over and over again. Like, we can't ever be quiet on what happened to your family.
Right. And I'll tell you what, I haven't slept well in years. And when they say that, or when you hear these deals of ancestors talking, it's real. And I was visited by, great grandfather, great grandfather. And so, yeah, I intend to tell a story tomorrow. Since we've spoken, a lot of opportunities have fallen or given me the ability not to just tell this story, but to tell what I was able to uncover or discover in the research, which will hopefully help so many others that are really, in search of really who they are. But I said this before, America's ready for the truth. California's ready for the truth. And so there's a way to share a truthful history without, putting down families that may still have descendants. But, we talk about reparations. And I'm just going to tell you, there are some European families that probably going to deserve reparations when this trauma is discovered and unfolded about what their ancestors were doing, and it's been hidden. And so, listen, this whole thing's been traumatic. It still is, but I find relief in therapy and just writing truths. And so I'm blogging, regularly, and researching. But yeah, the story, where do you want me to start? Where do we start?
Let's start at the top. I know the story, and people who have followed you and I, and you've been on the broadcast before, maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, you were here and you told the part of the story. But let's start at the top for those who may not know the whole story, and then we'll wrap up at the end with the hearings and how that all went, because this is the update.
Sure. Well, I'll start at the top, and really the top is what the matriarch of our family, which is our mother, Bernice Powers Burgess, who passed away about 5 years ago. But as a child, I remember her always taking an interest in our family history, specifically the rides up to Coloma, and Coloma. For those of you that are watching that don't know, Coloma, California, is the area where gold was discovered. They write about James Marshall discovering gold. So as a kid, 7 years old, I remember going up there, taking rides, long rides, dusty old ride. Had my uncle Marion, who was the oldest living, original pioneer. Well, not pioneer, but, from that era. I just remember him crying and not being able to speak and pointing. And for me as a kid, it was boring, hot and dirty, and the car smelled like old man. Because we got our own Uncle Marion. I mean, I didn't understand. And so my mother was like, you guys really need to know who you are and you should be proud of who you are. And it wasn't until she died that we inherited a cedar chest with a number of deeds and documents. And my mother was amazing, like most moms are. And she wrote down not just oral history, but now it's written history. And so we grew up as a child looking at a man over our mantle. And my brother Matthew and I are actually we said there needs to be visitation with great-great-granddaddy. But we grew up looking at a man being taught that was our great-grandfather. Looks similar to me, light-skinned. And we were told that's Rufus. Well, I couldn't understand why his Bible, which again, we've got his original Bible, had the autobiography of Nelson Bell. I'm like, as a child, it just didn't make sense. I'm like, Mom, you're saying our great-grandfather is Rufus, but his Bible says it's Nelson Bell. I couldn't connect the dots. And it wasn't until my adulthood, about 3 years ago, the Gold Discovery Park Association reached out to myself and my brother. And there's a church up there in Coloma, and it's called the Emmanuel Church. So they reached out to us and said, hey, your grandfather was married in this church. Come to find out it wasn't our grandfather, it was our actual uncle. And so it was Save This Church because it had become dilapidated. It's the oldest building in the town. It was built in 1856. It's still there today. And so my brother and I had been in some TV networks and some other things. And so we conjured up a media team and brought the exposure needed to get the state of California to put money towards this building. But it was like, why? This is the oldest building in the town, built in 1856. So it was about that time that I said, Matt, and he said, did Mom say we used to own a church up here? Yeah, we owned a church there in the town. And so we start looking, and sure enough, we had deeds, actual deeds from 1872 to what was called the African Church. And so some of the people in the town didn't want to believe it. They still don't believe it till this day. And they were, I guess distractors, if I may say, really telling us, well, your family owned, you should be proud. They didn't own this church. We did a lot of research. And I'm looking at all the players and I'm like, no, we own that church. So long story short, as I go back in history, our great-great-grandfather was the light-skinned man called Rufus Burgess. He was in Coloma in 1849, brought there. And even my dad wrote that he was taught it was his great-grandfather, or basically he's taught it was his grandfather. The light-skinned guy is what my dad thought. And so he was in the town in 1849, discovered gold. And as most early pioneers do and did, sent for their loved ones. He could read and write. He autobiographied his entire life. Well, when I first saw the dark-skinned man that was up in Coloma, that officials told me was my great-grandfather, I'm like, no, I don't know that guy. And my dad's like, who's that? I mean, my dad was older, and he looks up and he raises his eyebrows. Who's that? And I'm going to just say, who's that Negro? I don't know him. That's what my dad said when he first saw the picture of the dark skin, who was actually our great-grandfather, Rufus Morgan Burgess. We had always looked at the light-skinned guy that was Rufus Burgess. And so I start connecting dots and other historians. I'm like, okay, he sent for his son. And so there was an establishment of a church, a congregation in 1862, I'm back in 1851. I got documents. My great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather actually owned a gaming table and a liquor license in what we call El Dorado County, Mud Springs. And if you don't know history, it meant, well, back then, blacks and whites didn't congregate. So if there was a liquor license and a gaming table, you had a bunch of black people. are descendants of slaves or indigenous people. Even Chinese, they were segregated, but they were still indigenous, that gambled. White folks didn't come into the gambling areas, and that's just how it was. I'm like, I don't know why we don't share that history, but do you understand the amount of wealth that it took to establish a liquor license and a gaming table and to be legalized? This is El Dorado County Museum. And so my family really, when I look at them, they were pioneers of the town. Orchards, we packed fruit. I got fruit vouchers that were in the Bible from 1885 of our great grandfather coming down to Sacramento and selling $65 worth of fruit. And as the story goes, the state of California, came in and, took people off the land by eminent domain. They condemned the property. But before they condemned the property, in my research, there were maps that were drawn. Our family had been in the town for about 20 years. And yet the first township map that came out, no, not one Black family is listed as being a landowner. And we had established much. I do say that there have been, I'm just going to, white allies since the beginning of time, wrote little documents and left little nestles in paper. There was a paper called the Mountain Democrat, and it talked about the Burgess home. That was one of the nicest homes in the town. And all the nice homes in the town were up on higher ground, was raised by state employees in 1950 and not marked. And that's one of the things I'd go there today asking, why did we raise a house and not mark it? This is a pioneer house. Well, the house was surrounded by orchards. Orchards is land. And so what I've come to find out is, they put us on maps where they said we belonged, which is not necessarily true. And they condemned the orchards. So they basically got rid of them. When I talked to the distractors, as I would call them in Coloma, they told me that there were a bunch of viruses or different things that affected the orchards. When I say viruses, I'm talking about like weather-driven things that, affect the orchards. I've got aerial views and shots of 1946 of there still being orchards across the river. And so it's very interesting. Nothing's written about our family when you go to the park today. And our great-grandfather and great-great, they both were blacksmiths of the town. And so wagon wheels, Wells Fargo, I'm pretty sure he was fixing the wagon wheels for Wells Fargo. But we established a massive amounts of lands, and we didn't have large family, but I only assume that there was community because my great-great and my great-grandfather both were highly educated. Their writings are amazing. I've got documents of 1870 where my great-grandfather, Rufus M., was writing to the colored citizens about the kids being turned away from school and not being allowed to go to school in the town of Coloma and also in Lotus, a town over. And so, we get, well, you guys should be proud. And I'm like, well, we had a lot. And so when people say like reparations, I'm looking at, okay, well, this is reparations and restitution. But if this happened to my family, how many others did it happen that don't have the documents to prove it? See, we were fortunate because we kept the deeds, and there will be a reconciliation with the state of California and the Burgess family. But I am honored to represent all the pioneer families and just simply tell this truth, of really what happened, how individuals were buried under different names and their wealth taken. How, I had a historian by the name of Tina Alexander, and she was doing some work for the family. And she asked when she did a presentation, where are the children? Because again, the AME Church was an affiliation too. And the AME Church was really to educate the kids because we couldn't go to school with everyone else. And I think I found the children, a lot of them, I think I found the children. A lot of them were buried under prominent white family names, just under a different name. And how I found the children is really, unless the holders of the records, which they may go back and change everything, but it's going to be a lot of changing. So just go look at Ancestry or go look at Family Search. When you start looking at those tombstones, you'll see an estimated date that people were born. You see, Europeans have always kept really incredible history. They know the month, date, and sometimes even the day that their children were born. But when it came to the descendants of slaves or Black or indigenous, nobody cared. And so what I found was estimated birth dates for a host of people throughout these families and they're bare with prominent white families. Now, whether they were slaves, indentured servants, or taken, it's so true. And I'm just honored to be able to share this story and, hopefully help others. I will help others. Tamara, I formed a nonprofit, the African American Gold Rush Association, with the idea that will help other families do what it was that I did, and save buildings like the Emmanuel Church, which actually we have a deed that says it's the African Church. And so when you know history and you've done your history, I was able to research Emmanuel and know that that goes back to 1818 in South Carolina. And it had to do with African Americans or former slaves being able to worship Christianity. And so that building was built as the Emmanuel Church. And it was referred to and called the African Church because it never ever moved. And so there are orchards, massive amounts of orchards that surround that land. And there are custom homes that are throughout the land now. And so what I like to tell people this is, when we talk about reparations, this is what I want white families to know. And families that are not white. And let's just face it, a lot of them did inherit properties because of what was done before. But we would be just as wrong as America today to move those people off their lands. Because let's face it, I'm sure a lot of them don't know how they got the land. I mean, and honestly, if roles were reversed and my great-great-granddaddy did that, then it'd be my land too. So that's why reparations is needed, because it would be just as wrong to kick somebody off of the land. Now, in instances like Bruce Beach, where the state of California and local jurisdictions own it, oh, no. Give it back. Give it back and pay back all the back restitution that was lost and the trauma that families have experienced from experiencing that. But what I want people to know is this, is that in every group, in every race, there are always, and there always will be, always have been, different socioeconomic classes. Okay? There is a high disproportion when you look at black and white, when you look at pioneers like my family that were here. And actually, my great-grandfather discovered a gold mine and they took it from him. They wrote about it in the newspaper. $65 a ton, they put 100 extraction points on it. And per the federal laws of Congress, according to his patent letters for his deeds, when he got his deeds to his property, they were within their right. And so when you make it to U.S. Senate, I plan to come and share this story, because that was the federal involvement of how they affected generational wealth and a direct correlation with the wealth gap that exists between pioneer white families and pioneer black families today. And that's what we're talking about right now. Yeah, there are other groups that have been harmed, but I'm talking about pioneer families that were here. And for those of you that don't know, the gold rush is what made California the 5th largest economy in the world. Okay. And my family was here for it. Not only here for it, they cultivated land, they discovered gold, they established a church and community for black people, similar to like the Bruce Beach, because black people were not allowed anywhere else. And when the agriculture got good, European families came and took it. And when they couldn't take it, they used the government to help out. And that is the truth. And I can smile and say it because it's the truth. That's what people need to hear. And so I'll stop there and we can go into questioning. I'm honored to be here and share this story because I felt like if you heard my testimony, 10 minutes to share all this was just really not enough time. And I plan to, hopefully have more conversations as the California Reparation Task Force continues to develop, because I've got some incredible ideas that work when we look at what reparations should look like, not only for my family, but for the families that will never, ever know who their loved ones were because of the things that were done, that were allowed to happen with institutions, as our governor of California would say. The institutions. People work within those institutions, but at the end of the day, those institutions are responsible. And those institutions will be responsible for righting this ship, paying reparations, cash payments. Yes, indeed, those are due too. Maybe not everybody will get them because it stops somewhere. And at some point, you've got to provide and afford for your family. I'm not going to get into the details because that's not my fight. But I know that as the head of this household, I'll be responsible for making sure that my children are taken care of and get the education that they need and do what they should be doing. And had the United States of America done this a long time ago, tomorrow we may have this conversation. You know why? Because Grandpa Rufus of the Burgess family would have set up that legacy. Okay? The Johnson family, the Shealey family would have set up those legacies, and there would be an equal playing field. And so now all we're asking for our federal government to do, and we can follow California, but California's got to get this right. And I'll be along the way every step of it to ensure that they get it right. Thank you. And I'll yield the mic and let you ask me any question, because I'm sure there are plenty of them that are coming in, and I want them, I want to help.
Yeah, I just, your family's story, the fact that you have been able to go back as many generations as you have, I know that these ancestors are real. I know that we channel those spirits. I know that they give us information, stuff, Jonathan, that you wouldn't have known if they didn't come to you and give you that. Like you're real clear that you've heard from them.
I have heard from them. I told you, Tamara, I mean, we've talked offline. My great-grandfather, Rufus M. Burgess, visited me in a dream, and he told me, "You haven't seen all my writings yet." Literally, there's a picture of him. The first picture I ever saw was a few years ago, holding a pen, sitting in a chair. He looked like maybe no more than 30 years old, but he's holding a pen, sitting in a chair, dressed extremely nice. 6 months after he came to me in that dream, I found the Pacific Appeal newspaper articles where he had wrote the colored residents, the colored citizens, saying all of us need to push our shoulders together and push us through. And so I'm saying the same thing right now. Not only do all the Black people, all the white people, all the Asian people for humanity need to put their shoulders together and push this reparations ticket through. Because once we reveal the full truths, like my family story, you can't deny it. There's no denying that. So yes, I've been awakened and moved and pushed by my ancestors to keep pushing this ball forward and sharing this story, because the story doesn't even affect California. As I mentioned to you, there were federal things that were done. And so to our, Honorable President Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris, I'd say this: I want to talk to both of them, because our family is really the nexus for reparations, not only just on the California front, but on a federal front, because those pioneers in California can literally say, we were just doing what the federal government said. And this is 1878 that they took the gold mine and stole it from him. And they gave him deeds and patent letters that said he could not acquire claim to a gold, copper, or any other mine of value. How could the federal government do such a thing to a person that was 1878? When was emancipation? 62, 3, 5? How? This is history. True history, though. So, yes, I look forward to coming to talk to Congress. You just invite me up.
Oh, absolutely. We will be telling our stories. I'm telling you, I'm going in writing the Reparations Administration legislation. I will be going in writing that. So as this is introduced, we're going to have I'm going to take advantage of every opportunity for these stories to be told, events to happen, whatever it takes to keep the spotlight on this Reparations Administration. I'm going to absolutely do it, because this is going back. So here, I'm gonna go back to my question about the ancestors coming to you. And here's where I encourage, Black people, and this is just a sidebar, be open to the ancestors speaking to you. We have to be open to that energy, because this is where our liberation is. It's on the other side of it. It's on the other side of it. So Jonathan, I know, because I feel like sometimes I channel Harriet Tubman. I feel like I'm fighting to free our people. My family never left the South. We never left the South. So I'm like, how do we get out of this mindset I really feel like this is still the old South, and people still live as if it is like the 1800s, the early 1900s. Like, we still live like that in our minds in Georgia. And
yes,
this stuff is, You've been here.
I traveled. Yes, different mindset.
Yeah,
Different
it's a
mindset.
different mindset. And these stories, there's so many stories that need to be told that are right here in the South that people, they don't share. Like a lot of our ancestors have taken a lot of these stories to the grave. They don't share this because the history is so painful. Even
Yes.
the story of your grandfather, you mentioned how you discovered, some other things about how they handled him. Like they wanted to prosecute, they wanted to do these things to him, because they didn't want him to speak and tell his story.
Yes. And again, since I testified to the deal, prior to me testifying to the Department of Justice and the Reparations Task Force for California, the DOJ was instrumental, and along with the Secretary of State's office, of actually pulling Senate bills and providing me with information. And one of the things to that testimony is that, yes, the state of California enacted legislation that would allow them to prosecute my grandfather, not my great grandfather, my grandfather, for not selling our family's land to the state of California. And what the state of California did in our case is that not only did they take it by eminent domain, they condemned the land. And by them condemning the land, the legislation that I wrote, they didn't have to pay for it. So they just took it. Now, this land was full of orchards. When I mentioned to you that we were providing orchards to the Valley, El Dorado, Sacramento, and Placer counties. And so by them condemning this land meant we didn't pay you for it. We're just now going to condemn it, and now we're going to take it by eminent domain. And this was similar to the Bruce family, but the land was established and the community was established. They're very similar stories because the way I read this, Coloma was a township of Black people after the gold rush after the gold had been mined out and everybody left the town. It was a township of Black people, and it was a safe place until, now agriculture is important. What I find very interesting is that the state of California finished taking all this land and seizing the park by 1851. And there's this place a few miles east up the road, maybe 15 minutes, called Apple Hill. Well, that's Placerville, where all the voting rights went, and the European, Americans went up there. Well, Apple Hill became the prominent area for orchards and serving the valley fruit and all the other stuff. So, right after they condemned our land. And so, again, that was just another way to kind of cheat or give that advantage and take it away from, people that came here with nothing, that truly pull themselves up, established community. And you know what? There were some white families that came over from Ireland and other places that were not racist, weren't prejudiced. In fact, my uncle Todd married a white lady in 1919, got married in the church. It was my great granddaddy or my grandfather, my Uncle Todd. And in 1919, they didn't recognize a marriage, interracial marriage. They didn't. And so on the document, it says Todd Burgess or Edgar Burgess, and the wife is left blank. Okay. Yeah. And so later, I'm like, my Uncle Todd had the spirit of me, but he was more like, no, I'm going to go up. He went up in 1919 and got married in that church with a white woman. Listen, that's the town that just took the noose out of their logo. Okay. But Uncle Todd was Uncle Todd. I heard stories of him putting a shotgun in his car, in his truck, and riding up there because he was still angry about what had happened and what was done for our land when our land was taken. But that's a true story. Not written anywhere, but it's true story. And yes, it's truth that they got married in that church. I'm like, why would he go get married in that church in 1919? It wasn't a safe place. If you guys know your history, the Red Summer was going on, and there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in 1919, 1920, 1970, right? All that, the biggest riots in the world were breaking out. And Placerville, I'm just going to tell you, was not a nice place for Black Americans or descendants of slaves. But my Uncle Todd, no. And so our family was connected to some, fraternal organizations, members of the, Masonic order. And so that came to play too. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with, how we were able to continue to prosper, get deeds to property. But those allies and relationships actually left. I'm looking, somebody said had righteous anger. Yeah, Uncle Todd had some righteous. Yeah, listen, Listen, I just have it in a different way. You know, my righteous anger is like towards these reparations, you know, with a smile. And so, no, I get it. I understand it. But I probably wouldn't have made it back then because I'm too boisterous about right. And even if I had listened to the distractors, as I called them in Coloma, that were sent to get me off trail, I wouldn't have uncovered all that. There's still more I'm uncovering. And I intend to uncover it and tell the truth. It's like, Tamara, we were on a show the other day, your show, right? And I think it was Jen that said it. Love her, because she just came and she goes, listen, I grew up in school and I learned what America did to the Indians or indigenous people, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't make me hate myself. And I'm white. I'm European. That's what she said. But we need to know this history. So what's the harm in saying that? Well, yeah, what the government didn't do, they allowed the Klan to do for them. And then they came in and took the land and they took it back. They allowed these fraternal organizations to come in and chase people off of their land, eradicate them, scare them to death, actually murder them in some cases until they left. And then the government came in and took all the land and they redistributed it to everybody else. That's the truth. Why can't we just say that? That's why reparations is due. Because we are descendants of those people that actually came here with nothing, built things up. And once it became wonderful land, prosperous land, guess what? Somebody came in and if they didn't kill us and chase us off of it, they just took it. Or the European families that came over that were allies were quiet because they would die too. And they said nothing, they did nothing. And even today, what I find very interesting about the European is that they walk the same way. People think that we don't have allies. No, we do. They just move in silence. They don't say anything. They don't do anything, but behind closed doors, oh yeah, they're working. And it's actually better that way. I'd rather have them working behind the scenes because, let's face it, unfortunately, even today, they can get in rooms that I can't. They have privy to. So, and I want to set this straight too, because I think Black America needs to hear this. If I hear somebody refer to somebody as a house Negro, one more time, after this, I'm going to say you're not educated, but I'm going to educate you. My great-great-grandfather was in the house. He learned to read and write. Who do you think was coming out educating everybody else? See, what happens is we take one bad experience and we generalize it and we make it like everybody else. Actually, thanks to the house, brothers and sisters, those of us that couldn't and didn't have the privilege learned it. If you don't know about the fraternal organizations, the Masons, the light-skinned brother that actually went in, learned all their secrets, came back and brought it to everybody else, and we built the highest organization that there was until the Masons said, well, now we want to intertwine and have you guys be a part of us. You don't know your history. So I don't want to hear anybody else generalize and say that they're house brothers and sisters, because those house brothers and sisters actually brought us back and trained and gave that information. Now, yeah, granted, maybe there were some that didn't, but you know, rest Brother Malcolm, but he was awakened. But when we generalize and we put everybody in a category, it's just more distinction. Reparations, I don't care who you are. We're all on this boat together. It's time to make America great once and for all. And we'll do that with reparations. But everybody's watching California. And I'm going to be a part of this California task force, even if it's from the outside in. So I'm a stop. I'm on my mission. I'm a stop. It's my birthday though. It's my right today.
That's right. And you know what? I'm just glad for the education. The chat is blowing up. I'm glad to see everybody's engaging. Yeah, we need to keep talking about this. We can't be quiet about what happened to your family, because a lot of us don't know what as much as you do. So we need your voice in this bigger conversation of why reparations is important. So I'm loving every bit of it. I've been taking some notes. Yeah, you only had about 10 minutes and I watched the hearing. So for those of you who don't know, AB 3121, California, the Reparations Task Force, they had hearings a couple, maybe about a week or so, 2 weeks ago now. I don't know. It's been just recently. And Jonathan, I was like hopeful to hear so much from you. And I didn't know why your testimony was so short. Like, what happened?
Tamara, Tamara, when you have the knowledge that I know, you just open this conversation saying that you were kicked off, you were censored.
There it is.
When you start speaking truths that some politicians are not ready to hear because they haven't framed it yet to orchestrate what's going to happen, we censor you. So we're going to give Mr. Burgess 10 minutes, but see, I want to thank the Sacramento Fire Department for the opportunity of, Ray Jones actually appointed me as public information officer. And so I learned a lot during that time years ago, 15 years ago, when I was an information officer, how to deal with media. You tell media what you want them to know. And so if you watch my questions that I got my 10 minutes, I got 20 minutes because I gave them 5 and 10-minute responses. But every call, there's 3 minutes. And like I told them, my family was here in 1849. It's almost impossible for me to give you 10 minutes of testimony, but I'm going to do my best. But there's so much truth that I have. No, these are not untruth. These are truths. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share them with the task force one way or another, whether I'm calling in for 3 minutes for the remainder of the shows, or you get me on there again. But I will tell you, I've been afforded the opportunity to take some national stages and speak about what I've discovered. We will, not me, we will change history. Mm-hmm. We will together change history. And the evidence, evidence is too great. It's real. Documents, deeds, all that. So yes, thank you. I'm enjoying this. We should do this more often.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I was watching for you, right? I was anticipating. I had you live on Clubhouse. I was like, okay. And when you came in, and then I'm like, well, first of all, it was late, and I'm like, okay, where's Jonathan? And then I'm like, okay, and then it was just short. I'm like, this man has so much information. I just could not believe that they tried to decompress you like into this little time slot. I was shocked.
I'll tell you, Tamara, I didn't plan for that, but I did plan for it. Mm-hmm. And so, and again, I listened to some of the, and I don't have the doctor behind my name or historian, but listen, I can research. I've done research. And so even, I don't know if it was Dr. Barry, but the white lady that spoke, and she was really good, but she triggered me when she said that there were only 500 African-Americans that came for the gold rush. It was a trigger. And I'm like, I should be up here talking to the people. I really should, because what I didn't get to tell her, which is what I will, and I'll tell the task force, is no, there were way more than 500. They were just listed as white in the census. I got documented. My great-great-granddaddy was listed as white. Somebody clearly went back and changed it to like a big old bold B. And everybody below him, I'm sure they were white. He's the only black man on the list. But they came back and changed it. They edited that later, and it's so outstanding. And so I said this, that dead men tell no tales. There's a ride in Disneyland that talks about that, right? Mm-hmm. You can no longer lie. You wrote this stuff and you're dead. No more tales. He was listed as white. Somebody came in later and changed it to black. 2 different pins, a feather pin, a double feather pin versus a single. Different errors. So a lot of the pioneers that came over during the gold rush were listed as white. You know why they were listed as white? So they could mine in the gold field, because black and whites couldn't mine together technically. So these early pioneers that came over were actually mining in those gold fields listed as white. And it wasn't until 1849, late 1849 and 50, where they're like, no, you can't be having your slaves up here working. It's a disadvantage. And then you have the segregated townships and the segregated mining communities. But no, those early pioneers, they brought their slaves with them. And it was more than 500, because I'm going to tell you this. The AME Church did not send Reverend Jennifer out here to El Dorado County specifically and give him 5 preaching points for 500 people. No. One thing that we did is we had children. Lots of them. Mm-hmm. Always have. Okay? And so we asked, when you look in the town of Coloma and these other pioneer communities, where did the people go? They're right before your eyes. The children are buried under white family names. Some were even taken. Some we'll never know about because they were buried under different names. That's where the children are.
And you hit this nail right on the head by saying, first of all, they bought their slaves out here to do the work, because I can't see these first pioneers doing all this heavy work. Like, this is labor.
Who was
Like,
doing it? No. I mean, so here's the people that immigrated from Italy and Scotland, they didn't have, but when they came out here, they assembled, and some of them, listen, and I don't blame anybody. I would have done the same thing. Give me a hand to work, right? Slavery was accepted then. It wasn't about humanity. It was just like, this is just the way that it was. And so, yes, those original pioneers, but like I tell people, I read the escapade of William Kipp. William Kipp was a reverend for the Methodist diocese. He came out and started the church. He talks about in 1855 all the orchards and the beautiful scenery in Coloma, California, right, where he came. Those orchards were established before the gold people got here. Who do you think established them? There were indigenous people and free blacks up in those hills before gold was ever discovered, or the secret of gold. It's not that it was discovered. Marshall just let the secret out. The gold had always been in the hills. But you don't get those type of orchards and vineyards like Kip talked about just overnight. Those are rich vineyards. And yes, who was working them? Because those slave traders that came here from the South weren't doing any work. All their slaves did it. The black folks, they brought them. They just didn't write about them. They were here. We were here. But census says we're only 13% of the population. How do you think we flipped the vote in Georgia? 13? No. There's a whole bunch more that never registered, it never cared. We were talking, well, why vote? It didn't count. Your vote does count. That's all I want everybody watching. That's watching, not watching. Make sure you go and you support Tamara. You support her campaign, because if you're not even in Georgia, support her by donating to the campaign. Okay, and then after you donate to her campaign, for me to bring out some more history like this, $10, $5, doesn't matter, AfricanAmericanGoldRushAssociation.org. Come support me, because I'm going to tell this history and these truths, and I'm going to be on the front wave of this reparations in California and then the United States, either with President Biden or, whoever the next person is that moves forward. But I'm supporting Ms. Shealey Johnson. I'm on the ticket. It's my birthday and I'm showing out.
I love it. Jonathan, we definitely have a race to win to the United States Senate. And you said this, that we're we're ahead of this curve. Like, yes, something's happening and we're right here. And I've been around a long time. I'm just as old as you are, brother.
Congratulations.
We still young, yes, but we're getting on up there. But you just kind of see things when you know when something's happening and it's bigger and greater than yourself. And this is bigger and greater than you and I. This is about the reckoning that needs to happen in this country. And America knows it. America knows it. I get so many messages, inboxes. I get all kinds of messages from a lot of white people that they know that they don't know. They know that they don't know. And what they do know, they've been deceived. They know it.
Correct.
And these are the stories that they need to hear. Here's the real truth. Here's what you don't know about us.
That's why I love sharing it, because even in some of your chats in Clubhouse, the people are just so intrigued when they hear the true history. When I post in the California History Channel, I get the emojis with the big old mouth open like the drop, like I get those emojis because yes, we've hidden this. We have hidden this history, and what California with this task force, to some degree, they're allowing some of it to be kind of bubbled up. And I'm saying, no, task force, let's not censor this. And there's a way to frame it. I don't think I've offended anybody, and if I have, I apologize, because that's not my intent. But there's a way to share this true history and not be offensive, and explain why reparations is necessary. It's repairing and it's reconciling. We're going to repair and reconcile, but first we got to acknowledge.
And then they say silly stuff like, well, nobody today owns slaves, but you benefited. You're benefiting off of the work that centuries of free labor that this country it's the foundation of this country. You're benefiting off of that.
We all are. We are. And one group of people benefit more than ever, and they were given that head start. And so, I'm just going to listen. At the end of the day, I tell to my allies and brothers and sisters of other ethnicities, It's always been about black and white. When you look at those deeds in California where you can't live in a neighborhood, it said no Negro or black. It didn't say Asian, didn't say, it says black or Negro. When you talk about schools, well, okay, well, yeah, you know, you had indigenous that couldn't attend, but this is all about black. And we've kicked this can down the road so long, America, until we have this massive problem. You know, one of the things, Tamara, that I'd like to see for reparations is that if nothing else, the descendants, the federal government provided $1 million insurance policies for the elders. Because I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you how many European people have been made millionaires just from the insurance industry. And the insurance industry alone has made millions off of us. Okay. And so one of the things that our people don't do is we're not educated. And so we don't get that insurance. And then we inherit the funeral expenses and the burials of our loved ones. And very seldom do they have anything to pass on to us. And so wouldn't it be great? Because one thing we're all going to do is die. That's a guarantee. Okay. But what the federal government should do, oh no, AIG, all the insurance, I don't care if it's $500,000, whatever, you take out the policies and you pay them. So when those people leave here, their ancestors are set up. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money to pay those deals. And black folks don't start, you know, pushing your elders off so you can get paid. Okay, I'm not insinuating that. I'm just saying we're gonna all die one day. I don't want land just to have land without being able to cultivate it. But if I'm going to get land, yes, we want government contracts. And we want to go top of the line so that, guess what? The orchards, black farmers, indigenous farmers that are black, whatever we call it, you go to output contract by the states and the federal governments. We will build again. That's what reparations. Our ancestors never asked for anything. They built it. We're not asking. We're saying, give us what's rightfully ours and we'll rebuild it. So these government contracts that you've had people that don't look like you or me on it, right? They don't look like us, getting them since our people have been enslaved, that time is up. If you have not built wealth from a 10 to 15 year contract, I'm going to ask you to push for this federally. There is no reason why contracts do not have time limits. If you've had a state or a government contract for 8 years, which is 2 terms, or 16 years, and you haven't established more wealth or done something else, it's time to go. Because we need to bring some other people in. But what's going on right now throughout the federal government, throughout the state of California and everywhere else, you got these same people getting all the contracts. And they don't look like me and you. And so what happens is when you have people that look like me and you, culturally, we've been starved so much until we won't help our others. We'll sit at the table and we'll get fed. And we won't push that money out or push those opportunities out to anybody else that looks like us. So those are some things that are no cost items that can be done now. And for the small businesses that need help scaling, guess what? Federal government, local governments, you can help them scale, right? You can help them scale. Who do you think's providing all the genes for the prisons? Primarily with African Americans in there? Or the milk, or the well, I make barbecue sauce, all the barbecue sauce when they have barbecue, or cornbread, or vegetables. Whose land do you think the prisons are actually built on? State buildings, post offices. Oh yeah, there's land. And like I said in my testimony, the state of California, federal government, you can pay leases, you can pay, because that land at some point, I'm pretty confident there were black families that lived there that just got ran off. And who's going to ever look at a state building and say, who owned the land before the state did it? Or federal post office? Where did we go? No, I'm giving the world some ideas right now for what reparations should look like.
I'm sharing my screen. I want people to see the website. It is a very nice website. And this is the African American Gold Rush. Everybody go to the site, take a look at the mission, the events, get involved, let's support. So this is you inside. Is this you inside of the church?
Yes, that is the African Church of 1872. And it's under, I won't even say condemned. It's closed up and fenced off because it's fallen into disrepair. The state hopefully is going to do what they need to do to fix it, but they haven't. That's the oldest building that had been in the town. That's a building we have the deeds to. And I do plan on doing a campaign to raise money to ensure that we not only do the research to show that it was the African church for that community of people, but also that the Burgess family held and still has the deeds and are the rightful owners to that land today. It was surrounded by orchards. And so, yes, there's a Fox 40 clip that Fox 40 did a year ago where I'm basically asking the state of California to come and reconcile and make do. Or somebody come and talk to me and explain, when you Google African Church Coloma, that building comes up. And one thing that I learned from my brother, because he's in law enforcement, he knows about the GPS coordinates don't ever change. And so, yes, the coordinate of the African church points to that, and it's called Emmanuel.
Let me ask you, is that the outside of it? This yes. Church is beautiful. Like, I mean, this is a beautiful building.
Well, see all the dry rot and the steeple is falling over, but they've topped it off. But how's a building like that fall to disrepair? And when it's the oldest building in the town, why would the state of California allow that to happen? I believe this. They were hoping that the Burgess family were asleep on it so they can let it fall over, just like they condemned our property around all the orchards. They said it was going to cost more to repair our property and was too close to the gold discovery site. So they decided to destroy it and not mark it. I believe they have the same plan for the Emmanuel Church, only because it was the Black church. We did own it. We do own it. And we'll research that and make sure that it's known, because that was the church and the establishment for the Black people in that town. It's my great-grandfather, Josephine. She was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that church is absolutely beautiful.
So that's the church that my uncle went and got married in 1919 when they didn't list who his wife was. Mm-hmm. That's the church that is spoken about as the African church. That's the church that we have the deeds to today. And I look forward to, meeting with our governor of this great state of California to make sure that this church, just like the Bruce property, is put back into the hands of the rightful owners, and we restore the orchards, and we do some real farm to fork, and she'll have kids come up there and know. It's sad that when you go to that park today, there's no mention of the Black families in the Black community. You hear about one family that didn't get there until 1870. And a made-up story that park rangers or whoever else decided to make up and talk about. But that's a blacksmith. Our great-grandfather was a blacksmith of the town, and there's no mention of him when you go to the park today. How does this happen? So for those of you that are watching and listening,
so they've totally erased that history.
They've erased the Burgess history, taken signs down that talk about the Burgesses that are there. Those were some of the orchards around the church. So what I'm asking people that are watching this show is, please go, support, obviously you and your race, but any amount to help us with our efforts of really saving this church, because that is truly the African church and community for which that town was established. Save that church and allow us to help others with research and documentation and build a robust staff of historians that have true historical integrity, that aren't governed by California and institutions that have proven to do wrong until institutions can show that they're going to do right. That's visiting the gravesite of our great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather.
Wow. Go to the website. I just put it in the feed so everybody, you'll have it. It's the African American Gold Rush Association.org, all spelled out. Go to the website. Let's support. This is our living history that we're not going to let die. We're just not. Right. What a amazing video that was. Wow.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
Absolutely. That little 10 damn minutes they gave you, I could have screamed. I'm like, what in the world? How dare you?
Well, we made up for it today. So I want to appreciate you. And, I couldn't ask for a better birthday, just being able to share this story and all your listeners, but knowing that this podcast is going to go out and hopefully educate a host of others, get some donations, and then even, get us to a place where we're moving and educating people so that they don't look at the word reparations as a bad thing, but as a thing that will really bring unity and bring America to where it should be. And if we have to start in California first, that's great. But there are a number of states that are starting. And so I'm sure other people will have similar stories. I look forward to, again, building that robust staff of historians that can kind of dive in and help some other families as well.
Yes. And Jonathan Burgess, one of the two Burgess brothers who's turning 25 today. It'll just be 25. I want you to go and enjoy your birthday. Just know that the ancestors are pleased. They are pleased, brother. So you have a wonderful birthday. And of course, you are a friend to this broadcast, and you are welcome back at any time. Any updates, anything we need to talk about, you just say the word and it happens. So
I appreciate you. I'll definitely be in touch. I've got your number. You got mine. We'll be talking offline as well. There are a lot of developments, and so some things that I'll definitely want you to be a part of. And yes, when we celebrate the governor handing that church back over, I'm gonna need you to be out here. So we'll make that happen too. Okay.
Yes. Look, I haven't been to the West. I haven't been that far west. I've been to Las Vegas, but I haven't been to California. So it is a done deal.
All right.
Thank you, Brother Jonathan. Go have a great birthday. I'm going to sign us off. But before I go, I'm going to do my wrap up. But you go ahead and you enjoy your birthday. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, family. That was Mr. Jonathan Burgess, one of the two Burgess brothers. Update with Black Gold. We have to continue to tell our stories. We can't be quiet. We can't be silenced. We can't. But like I said, last week, this is what happens when we tell our truth. Last week, YouTube decided that I was just a bit too radical, shut my whole broadcast down. So I will be bringing my broadcast back to Facebook. Because they're eventually probably going to shut me down or do the same thing again. But we're not going to be quiet. But I have a backup. I'm working on something. Stay tuned. I will bring more information to you in just a little bit. But let me go ahead and every week, y'all, we give voice to issues, activists, and activism. Please support this broadcast. This is independent media. This is it. We have to tell our truths. We have to tell our own stories. Traditional media will never do it. They will never do it. We have to tell our own truths, be our own resource. We have to be our own source because they're not going to do it. Support this broadcast. Go to TamaraShealey.com. I work alongside churches to fight for reparations. Website is reparationssunday.com. Go to the website, see what we're all about there. I am intentional, y'all, about making sure this fight for reparations, that we're heard, that we are absolutely heard. If you're a descendant of chattel slavery in Georgia, support HB 541. HB541.net is the website. Go to the website. If you're a descendant of chattel slavery right here in Georgia, the legislative session starts in January, and we need to be front and center with this fight for Georgia to address the impact of slavery on the descendants of chattel slavery right here in Georgia. But on Mondays, y'all, I do Keeping Up with Congress, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, YouTube. But I'm not going to bring it to the Facebook page as well. YouTube is showing us, because they made it quite clear. They put out a article, and they're saying that basically they're anything about COVID, because I'm going to talk about it. Anything about COVID, they're shutting it down. So nevertheless, Keeping Up with Congress, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. right here on YouTube and Facebook. Clubhouse, if you are on Clubhouse, if you have not gotten on that Clubhouse app, you better get on, because you're missing it. White Women for Reparations every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are listening to They Were Her Property, a book that speaks about white women and their role in slavery. So we are listening to They Were Her Property on Clubhouse, 7 p.m. White Women for Reparations. On Wednesdays on Clubhouse, Reparations Sunday, where the community of activists, we come together and we collaborate, we update, we make sure that we're all on the same page with the reparations movement. So that is hosted on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on the Clubhouse app. Reparations Sunday Club, make sure you follow the club. Wednesdays on Clubhouse. All right. Hard conversations. I do a lot, y'all. I'm not sitting around twiddling my thumbs. On this race to the United States Senate, y'all, I'm working all day, all night. I wake up in the morning doing this. I go to bed at night doing this. This is my life. This is what I do 80 hours a week. At least I am doing this all day and all night. Hard conversations on Clubhouse. White women, black women, let's talk. We go there. We absolutely go there. We have a race, y'all, to win to the United States Senate. Please go to the website. Donate, donate, donate. It's going to take donations. It's going to take volunteers. This is a race that we can absolutely win. But on my way out, y'all, Facebook has shut me down on a video, on a video that I want to share. Let me find it. Give me just a second. Here it is, y'all. And then we'll sign out with my commercial. But I want to play this video, and I'm going to play it at the end of every broadcast because Facebook has shut me down. The censoring, y'all, the censoring that is happening on social media, it is unfreaking believable. But here we go.
When we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. Young prodigies. Grow. Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
Kicking the door, coming for our 40 acres and more. Our 6.4 trillion. Miss that no, we fought the Civil War.
We came from the poor. Start from the bottom, we still on the floor. We pray to the Lord. Amen. Picking the cotton, our fingers are sore.
Straight out the underground, escaping from slavery. The only cemeteries that we had were the trees. Watching our bodies while they blew in the breeze. Thinking to the north side to get free.
That way came from slavery. Where's on the mirror once you say owes me? Put her head on the door, but the werewolf schemes. Stick to the north side to get free. Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our
Look,
paper.
we taking them back. Putting Pettis Bridge on the map. Police came with the strap. That Sunday was bloody, no cap.
Stop capping.
Speaking of cap, Kaepernick taking knees at the flag. Where my justice at? We built this nation, better give me them racks. All fat, just imagine a little bit of gasoline. 4 girls got bombed back in 63.
400 years, yeah, we still ain't free. Our rise, we rise, take a knee.
Kaepernick.
Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
We stuck in the trap, with no shoes trying to pull up bootstraps. Increasing the gap, wealth got bigger so we had to adapt. Discriminated cause we black, I know it worth more than I know it's a fact. They tryna feel scraps, drag me on board so we can't come back.
30 years ago on April 19, Yusef and Triremi chemical read. If it happened to them, think it happened to me. Screaming out ready 5 to and free. Prodigy. Reparations, Martin said we coming for our check. Reparations, say it loud, 1, 2, mic check. Cream, cash rules everything around me. Dream, my legacy, you can't stop me. Coming for our 40 acres, HR 40 and our paper.
Young prodigies.
Y'all gotta pay me. Gotta get the cash. Gotta get the dough.
Thank you for tuning in to Tamara for Georgia, where we give voice to issues, activists, and activism. I am Tamara Johnson Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. I'm a progressive Democrat that believes that reparations will make America great. It is time that we bridge the divide in this country. Please go to my website. That's www.tamaraforgeorgia.com. Please join me every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here for Tamara for Georgia.